All right, folks, here we are for a late April edition of our sports podcast from the Santa Fe New Mexican. I'm sports editor Will Weber. As usual, joined by James Barron, who has just got done eating. So we had to wait to start the podcast for him to finish his latest meal. James, look, man, we're entering the home stretch of the high school sports season. But first, I got to tell you, I'm going to give you a cautionary tale, okay?
Uh-oh.
Don't ever lose your car keys like I did. As James
God.
knows, about 2 weeks ago, my oldest son, who's a high school senior, when I was out in front of the house doing some yard work, I put my keys in the trunk of the car just because I didn't want to carry them around with me. And he left for school with my keys in the trunk. So that was keys to multiple cars, the house, the
Was that in
newsroom.
the trunk or on the trunk?
It was on the trunk. It was on the trunk. So somewhere in the 3-mile commute between my front driveway and the school, those keys landed somewhere. So somewhere those keys
Somebody has a brand new car. They only knew about it.
Yeah. So I'll tell you, this is the part where you need to be careful. Replacing key fobs in this day and age, not cheap at all. And finding a reliable locksmith, even harder, which is it has been a 2-week ordeal, and I'm still not done with it. I spent 3 hours with a locksmith yesterday. He could not figure out how to give me a new key fob for one of my cars. So now the one thing I was trying to avoid doing, which is going to the dealership, I have to go to the dealership and pay an arm and a leg. So there goes my massive Christmas bonus that we all get.
So, yeah. That gift certificate's really going to go very far.
So do whatever you can, protect your keys like you protect your sanctity. You know, you got to do that. Otherwise, you're in a world of hurt. And with that, there's my TED Talk. Thanks for
TED
coming.
Talk about how not to lose your keys.
Man, I tell you
and
what.
How not to spend and how not to spend almost 4 figures.
Yeah.
4 over 4 figures probably.
And that is an absolute fact. Yeah. So my 2-week ordeal is going to extend into Friday when I have to go to the dealership, and they're going to charge me probably the price of a small child to have that finally fixed. So really looking forward to that. And with that, though, I know exactly where to get some money to help pay for it. I'm going to hit up Jake Hall, who just recommitted to UNM last week.
Did you talk about it with him yesterday when you had your little your little press conference there with him?
Yeah, we did. Yeah, the question was put directly to him. It's like, you don't have to answer this the way you want to, but how much did you get? He didn't come anywhere close to answering that question.
Of course not.
But let's just say it's a very high 6 figures, if not low 7 figures. That's my guess. He could have certainly gotten more had he gone to play for your Jayhawks. I know the Jayhawks had a Zoom call with him, but for some reason he chose to stay here. I'm thinking maybe it's the Frontier Sweet Rolls. I don't know what.
It might be that, but it also might be the fact that one of the blue bloods decided to Zoom call you instead of like, hey, why don't you come down to Lawrence and check out the place?
Yeah, he was interesting. The conversation kind of turned. It was about a 20-minute conversation, and he talked about how the blue blood programs don't necessarily look for star players. They look for pieces that can fill holes for players who are contemplating the NBA.
Yeah, I mean, just the thing with these blue bloods is, they're not worried about their guys going to the transfer portal. It's more who's going to the NBA and, who's going to test that process. And I mean, that's a long process if they're wanting to test and come back. And I just, I didn't want to wait because I knew Olen was building something special and I wanted to be a part of it. And I knew if I maybe waited too long, like the opportunity wouldn't be there anymore. So once I heard like people were waiting on certain guys to see if they were going to go to the NBA or not, I kind of just went back and thought it was the right move, and it was a gut decision.
Jake Hall's a star in New Mexico. He's a central piece in everything they do. If he goes to a Kansas, a Duke, or UConn, he's a role guy. And so, the goal there is not to make the Sweet 16, it's to win the national championship or at least get to the Final Four. Where here, you win a Mountain West championship and they're erecting bronze statues for you. So,
exactly. And if you win a tournament game, then you go down as one of the greatest players of all time.
Yeah. And no one loves their basketball players quite like New Mexico does. That's an overstatement. I know other schools do. Kentucky and Kansas and those schools certainly do. But here, there's just it's such a remoteness to this part of the country because there's no other programs within a 3-hour drive of here. There's not a major program until you get to Texas Tech. So it does feel a little bit different, kind of isolation, but credit to the kid for signing on for one more year. But I promise you, April of 2027, you and I are going to be sitting right here talking about how Jake Hall just signed on with Illinois or UConn or somebody. Somebody's going to pick him up.
And our question's going to, and the question's going to be, why did he wait so long?
Yeah. I think the answer is pretty apparent. His younger brother, who committed to UNM, of course, that was the news came out with Jake recommitted to New Mexico late last week. We are recording this on a Tuesday. He announced that on a Thursday of last week. And I think the decision had been made prior to that because his brother had come in for a recruiting visit on April, I want to say 10th. And they did a photo shoot with them in full uniform. And I asked him about that. Last Friday, when your brother did his recruiting visit, those pictures were posted to Instagram of the two of you in a uniform together. So if you're reading the tea leaves, it looks like you'd made the decision when that photo shoot had taken place, because had you done the photo shoot and then signed somewhere else while you're in the portal, it would have looked different. Had you already made up your mind by the time he showed up on Friday for his visit?
No, honestly, I didn't. My mom just really wanted us in jerseys together, kind of just to see and get pictures of it. So she kind of made me do that. But no, there wasn't a decision made at that time.
Way to throw mom under the bus. Isn't that awesome?
Yeah, I don't know if I believe all of that.
Oh no, I believe that. I totally get. That's a mom thing to do. It's like, well, if you guys aren't going to play together, I want one photo of you two guys acting like you were playing together.
Sure, that's true. But look at it this way. If, say, I entered the transfer portal and the Athletic were coming after me for a position to pay me quite handsomely, I wouldn't say, all right, before I leave, James, let's get together and do one last New Mexican photo shoot where I'm wearing my New Mexican golf shirt. No, I'd be like, see, I'm out of here.
Well, for you, well, we would for you, but but really the issue is you wouldn't want to do that anyhow.
I think once you put on the uniform and take the pictures, you're staying. That was my whole point to that. But no, one of these days, maybe you and I should enter the transfer portal just to see if the Athletic or maybe the Detroit Free Press or somebody picks us up. We could do that.
Yeah, I bet you'd be really disappointed if it turned out to be like the Rio Grande Sun, or the Quay County Communicator.
Oh man, you just threw a nearby rival paper under the bus. Wow. With all due respect to the Rio Grande Sun, love you guys. I think Glenn Rosales does the sports.
Yeah, he does.
Does a fine job. Glenn is he always contributing to us.
I didn't say anything about how bad they were. I'm just simply saying that's the interest that we would draw.
See, I was hoping you'd throw in like a fictitious place, like the Daily Planet or something. You could have done that.
I live in the real world, Will.
Yeah, that's right. There's nothing fake for you.
But I actually did put some thought into that for like a minute. Like, oh, what would I get if there was a transfer portal for journalists? And I was like, yeah, I think maybe I get to the Four Corners area.
Yeah,
outside of these this state, nobody knows who the heck we are.
You'd be scraping the high 30s in terms of pay which would be great. It'd be outstanding.
Oh
pay
yeah, yeah. That's a pay raise. Yeah.
That's the ugly side of our job. Is our office is usually the front seat of our car, and we don't make a ton of money. But hey, we get paid to watch people run around, which is kind of cool. But
yeah, it is. I guess that is the side benefit to all that.
Yeah. So busy week in high school sports this week. Busy week and other stuff going on too. I know you cover the New Mexico United. They've got their season finally going. But the United and UNM both have a joint kind of semi-venture thing going on this weekend where the Lobos football team has their annual Cherry Silver Spring game at 1:00 at University Stadium. And that night, the United play at Isotopes Park.
Right across the street there.
Yeah, which is going to be Carmageddon. It's going to be pretty rough.
Get there early because you're not getting there late.
Yeah,
you will get there late. Just
yeah, I would think that the football game will probably draw around 10 to 15,000 fans because there's some interest in the football program right now. They've got it going on, and then United always draw really well.
Yeah,
And I know you're working on a story about the United playing at Isotopes Park, because look, you and I personally know a couple of people who work in the grounds crew at Isotopes Park, and off the record, they'll tell you what a huge challenge it is, logistical challenge it is to transition from baseball to soccer and back and forth. But I know that's a story you're going to be digging into this weekend. So I think that's one of those things people don't really think about until they see it happen.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's interesting. I think the bigger issue though is that, or the big story, the big item out of this is just that, the United has been looking for its own place, and they're obviously it looks like they're going to get it down in the fairgrounds. At least that's what it appears like at the moment. And I mean, let's be honest, the organization has proven over its 7-year existence that it has a foothold in this city. I mean, they continually attract 9, 10, 11,000 people here.
Yeah.
So it seems to make sense that they deserve their own stadium, which is kind of the plan right now. It'll take up kind of that part there. It's kind of interesting because it does raise some other questions. They talked about, I think, putting it on the southwest side of the fairgrounds, which leads me to wonder, well, what's going to happen to the flea market, and what are you going to do with, like, say, some of those halls that are nearby where the stadium's going to be? Because if they're the concepts that I've seen, or that Peter Trevisani has talked to me about, is they're going to make this into a really nice park in an area where people can walk their dogs, and you can kind of hang out, and I'm like, well, what's going to happen to the state fair then? I mean, where does the Midway go? Where did all these halls and exhibits go? And it'll be interesting to see what comes of it, if this is, as a matter of fact, what's going to happen. But for the time being, for at least the next couple of years, I mean, there's still going to be an Isotopes Park, and you're still going to have this challenge of trying to balance, the baseball team and the soccer club, and that's been one of the bigger issues for the United. They struggle getting games, especially during the summertime, which is the peak season for the USL Championship. So they're having to balance their home games with the Isotopes. And now that they've extended the minor league season into September, instead of October, it used to be end of August. Labor Day was pretty much when everything shut down for minor league baseball. Now they're going a couple of weeks extra. So that means you've got an extra couple of weeks where you're having to figure out, okay, where can I fit a home game to be able to play soccer while we also have the baseball team here at the same time. And it's quite the challenge. And one of the things that Peter Trevisani talked about is, not having that ability to be able to schedule games when they want, because they have to accommodate, it's really the Isotopes that have to accommodate them, as opposed to the other way around.
Yeah, I know that it's really since the pandemic, in a way to curb some of the costs for minor league baseball, they switched from basically 4-game series at home for minor league baseball to now 6-game series.
6 games,
You essentially play an entire week at home against one team, and the travel day tends to be Monday. So the teams will take Monday off and then play Tuesday through Sunday against a team. And the reason for doing that is I'm not sure if really everyone understands the way minor league baseball works, but minor league teams pay for the travel of each of those teams. So you're talking about 26 to 30 guys on the roster, plus coaches and coaching staff and support staff. So you're talking about 40 seats, and they fly commercially. They don't fly privately. So the Isotopes are having to buy 40 plane tickets for, they would have these 4-game series. They'd be flying all over the country. Now the PCL is consolidated. It's only a 10-team league, and it reduces the number of road trips by about half. And so they're saving quite a bit in money. But what it does is the Isotopes eat up an entire week of games at home, and then when they leave, then it kind of becomes a United venue. Then the United can try to sandwich on all the games, but in between, you have them trying to convert from soccer to baseball,
and back.
Yeah, which is a lot. It's a lot of there's a lot of logistics going on behind the scenes, but yeah, it's not as simple as building a stadium anymore, because there's no such thing as just plopping down a new stadium for a team, a soccer team, a baseball team, whatever. It has to be an entertainment district. You have to have some sort of retail, some sort of commercial space, some sort of recreational green area. And that's since day one, since you and I have both known Peter Trevisani, he's always talked about the need to not just build a stadium, but to do other stuff. So
you can to kind of build a community around it. Yeah.
Yeah, and anyone who's been to the fairgrounds knows that. Look, we've all been to the fair, and we all have our own horror stories. But that area could definitely use like a central figure, something clean, something brand new that attracts. It's not the best area in town either. We're talking Central Avenue in Louisiana.
Why, you got something against the International District?
Well, the Central Louisiana is not a terribly, shall we say, safe place to be.
Yeah. I mean, talk about a branding that never worked. They tried to change it. They tried to change up that area and said, "Oh, it's the International District." No, it's the war zone. Everybody knows what it is.
Yeah, and by building a soccer venue, and certainly the soccer team has proven it's a sustainable business model that can work. Can they work outside of Isotopes Park? Isotopes Park tends to draw a crowd no matter what. So is it the stadium that's drawing a crowd, or is it the team that's drawing a crowd? Because we saw how the Scorpions did well at Tigli Coliseum over in the fairgrounds.
And then when they got to Rio Rancho.
Yeah, they moved to Rio Rancho and they died. And then the same thing with the basketball team, the Thunderbirds, which were owned by Sam Bregman at the time. They drew all right at Tigli Coliseum. They moved to Rio Rancho, couldn't do anything. So sometimes a move here in Albuquerque, or in Albuquerque in general, does not tend to bode well. But it's funny, no matter what goes on with a venue these days, there's always the talk of not what we can do to the stadium per se, it's what we can do to the surrounding area.
Surrounding areas, yeah.
Yeah, and UNM they've started announcing master plans for that area around the pit, around the football stadium, and around the baseball and softball venues, to bring in commercial businesses and residences and some green areas, which is seriously long overdue. Because when you go watch a game, you want to stay in that area, eat, maybe do something with your kids, do something like that. So,
or do your shopping at Target, because apparently that's the big that was the high water, that was the item that they were pushing, was like, oh, we're bringing in a Target. Like, okay, that's nice.
Yeah,
I guess all those college students that sit over there in Lobo Village, now they have a place where they can get price gouged.
Right. So James is now banned from Bayard Cobre, from Garden City, Kansas, and now Target. Oh, and now the Rio Grande Sun.
All Targets.
The Rio Grande Sun just canceled your subscription. So
and Espanola. I pretty much got a pass there with Espanola.
Because you're out there. You're the resident boxing expert now in the city of Espanola.
Yeah, that's true. That, and also they've done their worst to me, and I kept coming back. So they're like, oh, I guess this guy's all right.
Well, see, that leads me to my next point. I know you covered boxing out in Espanola, and one of the first things you texted myself and our designer, Eric Olen, is that you got blood upon. You got splattered with boxing blood. Tell us that story.
Well, it was in the middle of one of the final four fights, and those last four fights were really good. They all went the distance, and so it was Eduardo Piñon from Santa Fe in his third fight, and he went up against a kid from Albuquerque that had kind of challenged him in the ring the previous bout back in January. And so they got together. His kid's name was Quentin De Leon, and I mean, and in all honesty, De Leon got the crap beat out of him, and that's how bad it was. There's in the middle of that fight, they're sitting there and they're just going at it, and the kid's just taking a beating, and all of a sudden, there just comes this wall of blood that just comes spewing out of him. And there were three people that sitting on the table there on the side, and we all got hit. And I got it on my notebook, I got it on my arm. Fortunately, I didn't get it on my shirt. And I learned later from some of the boxing experts there. They're like, yeah, dude, don't wear bright colors, man. You got to wear black, because the blood really shows on your shirt if it's anything but black. So so it's, again, still a rookie mistake, but still.
Yeah, you went to cover boxing and you came home with hepatitis. So that's good. That's a good name.
Makes me feel good.
One of my first, in fact, gosh, I think might have been one of my very first assignments ever for a sports writer, full-time sports writer in the state of New Mexico. I was covering boxing at the OK Casino tent that they used to have in the parking lot. I was about 26 years old, and I was sitting in the first row. The only time I've ever worn a tie to any work event ever.
Oh, God, well, no,
that's bright yellow silk tie and my white shirt, and this guy from Kentucky had a welt the size of a golf ball over one of his eyes.
Ooh.
And he got punched, and that thing exploded.
Everywhere.
Big dollop of Vaseline, bloody Vaseline, came through the ring and landed right smack in my tie. And I was like, all right, I'll never wear a tie. And it looked like I just murdered somebody. Look, so, yeah.
Good thing you didn't get pulled over, man. You'd had a lot of
No.
questions to ask.
And Espanol are probably like, yeah, it's another Friday night here. So, but no, that's the cool thing about boxing is you see things that you and I, we're used to team sports and we sit from safe distances. And in boxing, you're right there in the middle of it. So, yeah, good times, man. So we're going to take a quick break. There's a lot of high school sports stuff. We are very quickly approaching the finish line for the high school sports season. And we ran our North Star segment last weekend. We can talk about some of the top individual athletes we picked for that. But we're going to take a quick break. We'll talk about that and hopefully recover from our hepatitis incidents 30 years apart.
I'm David. I work for Chevron, and this is my New Mexico. Chevron's been here for 100 years. My family could go back even further. All of my brothers work in energy.
I grew up in Farmington, New Mexico. There is a lot to love about New Mexico. We are raising our kids here.
We're here for the long term. I'm paving the way for my daughters so that they feel the same pride in New Mexico.
Here we go.
All right, look, I love those commercial breaks, but James, I think what we really need to do is we need to get the city of Bayard, New Mexico, and Garden City to come in
the city of Commerce, definitely needs to sponsor us.
Come see Bayard, New Mexico, and Garden City, Kansas, but not James Barron. That's what we need to do. See if we can get a commercial. We'll put Matt Dulcide on that. See if we can reach out to those people, have them sponsor a podcast. We could have the Chamber of Commerce director, whoever it might be, and they'll put a giant X through your window.
Yeah, I was gonna say, do you think like when they have those little welcome signs, "Welcome to Bayard," except James Barron, with a photo of you right there,
a picture of you on the podcast eating or something. That's what they'll do.
Yeah.
Look, high school sports is going to be completely done in about 1 month for now.
Yeah,
so we're
crazy.
we're really quickly approaching the finish line. But last weekend in the Sunday New Mexican sports section, we chronicled the athletes of the year for the winter sports seasons of basketball, boys and girls, swimming and diving, wrestling, and powerlifting. First time we've done powerlifting. So there are 10 athletes total. And then we kind of recapped the year that was for high school sports throughout the course of the winter. And look, we've talked a lot about Kamal Stith, who is our big school boys basketball player of the year. But like players like Jordan Gallegos from Mesa Vista, Leah Boys from Mesa Vista, those are our small school boys and girls basketball players of the year. Then Cadence Riley from Santa Fe Indian School, a really delightful kid. I know you and I both had a chance to interview her. Just a really sweet kid, very smart, and she's off to compete in college at the next level. She's already signed on with a college team. Vicente Garcia, the undefeated wrestler from West Las Vegas, I know you got to cover. And then Natalie Romero, the female wrestler from Milwaukee Valley. Powerlifters were Sophia Miera from St. Mike's, Jared Lewandowski from St. Mike's, and then our two swimmers, which included Ian Wald from Santa Fe High. Ian, of course, the first individual state champion from Santa Fe High, and since I think you and I were diapers.
Yeah.
Long time.
Yeah. That's a generation, man. That's a generation of Santa Fe High athletes coming through and failing.
Yeah. And so, a lot of these kids are pretty easy to pick because throughout the course of the season, you really start to see some separation. But like when you look at the spring sports, it gets a little harder because there's so much going on.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And so we probably won't make the final decision on the spring sports stuff until we actually get to the championship events, which are right around the corner. This week brings us an opportunity to talk. There's some really important high school baseball and softball games going on, which I know you're going to go to a game this afternoon, baseball game. So let's talk about the race everyone's interested in, which is 2 AAA for baseball.
Yeah. Let's just jump right into that. Really, this week I really do think this is good. This week will determine who the district champ's going to be. You've got today, as we talk about, we're doing this on a Tuesday. So Tuesday afternoon, Santa Fe Indian School plays West Las Vegas. And right now, the way the district is played out, you got St. Mike's at 3-1, Indian School and West Las Vegas both at 2-1, and Robertson bringing up the rear at 0-4. Man, I don't think anybody saw that Robertson was gonna be that was going to be winless at this point. I think people thought they would be a little bit better, a little more competitive, but it just hasn't worked. Just hasn't worked out. And I think a lot of it is just they lost a lot of seniors, and they were a really young group there. So it's
their coach,
and they got a new coach. They got a new coach too. So there's a lot there that they're having to deal with. But getting back to it, we got Robertson playing St. Mike's in Vegas, same time that Indian School and West are playing. Depending on how things play out, we could either see St. Mike's still holding half-game lead over whoever wins between Indian School and West, or we could see that winner being the district leader. And then we get to the weekend, and you follow that up with another big weekend series where Indian School and St. Mike's play each other again to finish off their season series. And as you covered last week, St. Mike's beat them in the first matchup 3-1. And so really they've got all they need to do is get a split, and they've got the head-to-head advantage with the Braves. And then on the flip side, West Las Vegas plays Robertson in a doubleheader. So, we really could see, I mean, the way it looks right now, my gut feeling just tells me we're probably looking at it being coming down to the game between West Las Vegas and St. Mike's next week in Santa Fe. To determine who the district champ's going to be, because I get the feeling, my gut feeling tells me that West and St. Mike's are probably the two best teams in that district. They played each other on Saturday. They split the doubleheader. I think St. Mike's won 15-6. West came back, won the other one 14-7. So you can tell that they're those are two really well balanced teams. And I think the biggest question is, why do you want to win the district? As we've talked about time and time again, the worst thing that you can do for yourself is to win that district.
Mm-hmm. Yes, I know St. Mike's, they had a doubleheader against Robertson earlier this season. They couldn't play that second game, and they pushed it back to the final Saturday of the regular season, which is the best thing, because I think St. Mike's last game to the regular season was that Tuesday of the final week.
Yep.
So they rescheduled this one they pushed it to the very last day that they could, just so both teams have an opportunity to play. Look, Robertson will probably get to the state playoffs, even though they're just not very good this year.
Yeah, they'll probably be a low seed though.
Yeah, and then but St. Mike's, that last game kind of bridges that gap. They would have had, I think, a 17-day window where they wouldn't have played. Now at least it closes it.
Now it cuts it down to about 11 or 12.
Still a long time when you're talking about baseball, because everything's about timing in baseball. Because man, you take that time off. And I talked to Augie Ruiz. Yeah, because they will not let them scrimmage teams from other schools during that time. So he was thinking maybe trying to bring in a group of alumni or even volunteers to throw to these guys, have simulated games. That's the only way they can really do it. But yeah, it's a logistical problem. That the successful teams always find a way to kind of to cross that goal better than other teams. And St. Mike's hasn't been able to do it. Is this the year? Yeah, I don't know. You just don't know.
Boy, that had the sound of confidence there.
Yeah,
that was an endorsement.
Yeah, you and I have both had that interview with Augie Ruiz a lot over the last 7 or 8 years, however long it's been. It seems like every year something calamitous happens, whether the hitting falls flat or the pitching, or they throw the wrong guy and they give up a ton of runs early on.
Yeah, or they get up to a bad start. I still remember the game against Indian School when they were the number 1 seed and they give up 5 runs in the first inning. Yeah. And they never could get back into the game. It's things like that.
Yeah, and that's the advantage of the 5A schools, the big schools, because they have a 16-team bracket, so they get to play that first weekend. And yeah, it's a bummer that we don't have access to the 5A schedule quite the way we probably should have, because Santa Fe High and Capital just they're not factors. No, Santa Fe High plays La Cueva twice this weekend in a doubleheader, which is going to be rough. La Cueva, of course. Finally, they beat Cleveland last week. Cleveland had risen to number 14 in the country in the Max Preps national rankings, and then they lost twice, 2 times in a row. They lost to La Cueva, and then they turned. I think it was Rio Rancho beat them. Rio Rancho beat them, and then Siebel turned around and beat them. But even then, La Cueva is just a monster unto itself. So 5A is really balanced. They've had 4 different state champions the last 4 years. 5 of the last 6 state champions have all been different. And here we are, it'd be nice to have Santa Fe High or Capital make a run, but that's not going to happen this year. So
no, in either baseball nor softball. Really, it's just they're just not equipped. I mean, even in 4A, they'd probably be better suited for to compete in. But even then, I mean, you still got that same issue that you do with 5A, where the Albuquerque schools dominate, and then you still got to deal with Artesia, and and you got to deal with Silver, because they play some really good ball down south there as well. And so you still run into those issues where you'll be able to beat the Espanolas and maybe the Los Alamoses of the world, but once you go play an academy, or once you go play a Pius, totally different game. They've got really good pitching, which is I think is really the difference between those two schools and everybody else. Is just you can have all the hitting you want, and you can develop good hitters, but if you don't have the pitching to be able to go toe to toe with a La Cueva or even a Sandia or an El Dorado, you're always kind of on the outside looking in. I mean, you're having to win games 15-11, and that's just not sustainable.
Yeah, and then it's what stinks is they spent all this money on the new facilities at Capitol and Santa Fe High.
Yeah,
and you think, and we've seen that when they build these things, you think, wow, what an infusion! It's going to be great. Program's going to get better. People are going to want to come out and play. It doesn't. It's just a nicer place to watch the same old thing.
It really is. I think in 2 years things will change. I think we're seeing and it could be to the point where we see the way they align these classes change as well in terms of the enrollment figures that they're using. But right now, I mean, I think the best thing that could happen right now is that Santa Fe High and Capitol both dropped the 4A because their enrollments are declining and probably a little bit faster than people realize. I think the school district just went under 10,000 students in the entire school district, and the numbers at Santa Fe High and Capitol are both going to fall down below 1,400 probably by the time we get to 2028. So, there is hope that they can get down to the 4A level where, I mean, that's really where they need to be. I mean, even now, I mean, they're just, they're 5A, they're 4A schools and 5A clothing, and it's not really benefiting them across the board, but especially in baseball and softball.
Yeah, click clacks you hear in the background. Those are my 4 dogs. They just discovered I was in the middle of something, so naturally they come down here. Yeah,
of course, yours did. So did mine. He came. Winston came over here and just he needed attention. So
yeah. Before we wrap it up, I'm going to tell you the life of a domesticated sports journalist. There are some signs that you're going to have a really long day. Other than the fact that watching your son drive off with your car keys on the trunk, that was a story. Is first of all, when you live in a house with all these dogs, if you discover that you forgot to put out pee pads in the middle of the night, that's a problem.
Oh, yeah, that's a great way. That's a great good morning.
Yeah, and so my house is going to smell like vinegar and Windex for the rest of the day. And also, when you wake up and there's a lot of empty hangers in the closets, means I'm going to be doing laundry all day today. So that's prior to going out and covering sports this afternoon. I'm going to turn into June Cleaver this morning and start doing all that stuff. So
please don't tell me you wear heels.
If I could afford to buy heels, I probably would buy that. But still wearing the same old shoes I've worn since 1994, I think, maybe. We'll see.
Yes.
Yeah, I can't wait for this weekend. That's going to be a fun time. There's a lot of high school sports we can get to, and then of course the deep dive into the use of Isotopes Park between the soccer team and the baseball team. And I know that both entities they always say the right things, but I think secretly they can't stand one another because they each want their own section of grass. And stuck in the middle of it all is the grounds crew at Isotopes Park, who has to go out and fill all the divots and move the sod around and do all that stuff. So, those guys are making even less than we are for the most part. So,
they're
I
know.
Not very,
that's who we should have on, some of these groundkeepers people that we know.
Yeah. I know exactly where to find one of them, and he lives under my roof. So, my son is on the grounds crew, and I hear all the horror stories about it. So, that'll be.
He loves it, doesn't he?
Yeah, he loves it. It's a really cool job. You get to watch games from the dugout, which is something we don't even get to do. But
yeah,
it's interesting. Anyway, that'll do it for this week. As always, if you have a suggestion for athlete of the week, we run those every Tuesday. Send those to sports@sfnewmexican.com. And as always, the newsletter. I always forget to update the newsletter every single Tuesday. I get constant emails from Matt Dahlside and Eric Hedlund about me forgetting to do the newsletter. Subscribe to our newsletter. If you go to the New Mexican newsletter page, it's inside the huddle. Is that right, Matt?
In the huddle.
In the huddle. I shows you how much I actually read it. I write it, but I don't read it. But subscribe to that, and maybe one of these days we'll have a commercial on here from the fine folks in Bayard, New Mexico, promoting their fine city without James Barron being welcome. All right, folks, thanks for tuning in, and we will see you a week from now.